The Skotak brothers had gotten aliens, and they'd asked me to come to Britain and run the model shop. And I asked Mark if I could leave early from Poltergeist 2. And I went to Britain, and I really hadn't run much of anything, and I was sort of a novice at it. And I had known Cameron, so we knew he was going to be not difficult, but just demanding. He's very demanding. He understands all the departments because he had done them at Roger Corman's, for the visual effects, the special effects stuff, to art direction, to camera. Art department. Jim had done it all at Rogers, so he had a good working knowledge of all the departments. And we had gone to Britain, and it was a whole different system of working that we had to get used to. The British system, it's just different, and it took us a while to sort of figure it out. And I think a lot of the people there were not real open to us because it was the Americans coming in. But eventually, we all got along, and the crews were great. I had a really, worked with really good people there. And Aliens was sort of because it wasn't a huge budget. Jim got the Skotak brothers because they were sort of the masters of the in-camera effects back then. A lot of these disciplines had sort of been not forgotten, but hadn't been used, with mirrors and foreground miniatures and perspective miniatures. All the in-camera stuff that we were doing at Rogers that the Skotaks were really good at were used in Aliens because it was such a low budget, and there was a lot of work and not enough money. So Jim knew that they could do these shots where ships were on wires, or we had to integrate people into miniature sets through mirrors and all these old techniques. They were great. The Skos were the guys for the job, and they asked me to come. So it was a very difficult job just because of the time frame of, we didn't have enough money, and that was a battle that just made things harder. And we were not used to the British system, which we got used to it after a while. We both got used to each other. The British got used to us, and we got used to them. And it just took a while to sort of figure it out. And again, I met some great people on that project that were incredibly talented. A lot of really great craftsmen there. But it was a tough one, I'll tell you. I was supervising, I hadn't really done it, so I wasn't great at it, because I'd done a little bit of it with Dave Jones on the Choose Your Tomorrow thing. So it was sort of a strain for me. But the guys were great. The model makers were really good, and they rose to the occasion and made it work. And the Sulaco, which is the big spaceship that you see, Jim wanted to make that 20 feet long. And we just didn't have because he was going to get close, we just didn't have the money to do it. And I said, I can make it work at 6 feet. And so some of the guys started on the basic shape, and we were winding down towards the end. And a couple of model makers, this was designed by Syd Mead. Syd did a lot of stuff for V'ger. He was sort of the big motion picture visual futurist. That's what he was called. And so the Leonov was designed by Syd Mead. So I really knew his style. I could really read his style of drawing, because a lot of conceptual artists, when you start looking very closely to something, there's not a whole lot there. It's more the feeling. Whether something is positive or negative, it's sometimes really hard to tell. When you see the overall image, it looks great, but when you get down to sort of smaller details, you go, what is that? It's hard to tell. And Syd Mead had a certain style that I just could interpret pretty well. So I ended up doing the bulk of the detail work on the Sulaco. And when the guys had built the basic shape, some of it wasn't quite right because we didn't have hard and fast, blueprints of the thing. So I rebuilt some of the shape and did most of the detailing. And the Skos came in and worked on the nose because they wanted to do something, because they were going crazy on the stage. Because to give a scale to these monstrous sets, they were the size of sound stages, we would fill the room full of smoke. They give you aerial haze, which gives you some sense of scale. Because if you don't have anything in the air, it really helps make it look like a model. So by putting some haze in the air, that's natural haze that you'd see when you're outside. It sort of gives you the sense of depth and all this kind of stuff. And they were getting sick of being in the smoke every day. So sometimes in the evening, Bob and Denny would come and help detail stuff on the Sulaco. So then I painted it, and I was pretty happy with that model. It came out pretty nicely, and I think Syd Mead had told me a long time ago he was happy with the look of it, because a lot of times his design wouldn't necessarily be followed completely accurately to the finished product. Some stuff would be changed or modified. The director might change something. So we tried to stay as close as we could to his design. The Queen and Power Loader were quarter scale in Aliens, where they were quarter scale cable controlled puppets. And we built quarter scale sets that were off the ground. And what you did for shots where you didn't see the feet actually touching the ground, they cut slots in the set floor. And let's say the Queen and the Power Loader just had like a rod. So you were actually making, we had a puppeteer that was actually making the thing walk, but the bottom of the frame didn't show the rod sticking up to the foot. And there was a pile of cables, and you could, Doug Beswick had built these things. They were really amazing, and Phil Notaro. The arms could move, the things could move in and out, and there was a lot of, motion that was cable controlled, and she had a little light that was spinning at the top of the power loader and all that. So once those shots were done, the Queen was the same way. It was quarter scale Queen that was fully articulated, with down below there'd be all these puppeteers pulling levers to move cables, to move arms and everything up top. So once that was all shot, we had to do a shot where we're looking at the vertical shaft that Ripley has opened. The Queen and the Power Loader fall into this thing, and now the outer door that leads to space is closed, and so Ripley crawls out, pulls the lever, and opens the door, and the Queen is hanging on. You see the Power Loader fall away below the Queen. Well, that was a miniature. We built the vertical shaft in quarter scale, took it up to a high point of the stage, and they had a piece of black material that everybody held like a fireman's sort of blanket, whatever, to catch somebody. And they put Christmas tree lights in the middle of this thing. So for the camera, you look down through this shaft, it looked like space, like stars down there. So they're blowing air, and they release the Power Loader. Now, they just cut the cables. It was a shame. There's only one Power Loader. This whole bundle of cables that came out, they just snipped it because we were done with it, right? And sort of hid the cables. So this was a fully articulated, full of, gears and what have you. Anyway, so it's just sort of sitting there, and they release it, and it falls away. And unfortunately, the people holding this piece of black material, it was a concrete floor. They were not holding it really tight. They didn't realize how heavy this thing was. So it hits this material, goes right and smacks right on the concrete floor. Just goes right through, pushes the material down. Kablam! The whole thing just sort of blows apart. Power Loader just blows apart, and it was thin, very thin fiberglass, and just so I go ooh, and Robert Skotak goes, I don't think we got that shot. It fell away and sort of spun or something like that, and I think Jim didn't like it. So I think there was myself and somebody else. We glued it all back together with hot glue sticks and tongue depressors and whatever. Just to glue it all together, because it had to get turned around. It might have been reshot that day. I don't remember. And I think I sprayed it with a can of spray paint, whatever yellow. And so it just looked like crap up close. But that's the shot that's in the movie. When you see that thing fall away, that's the one that was just blown apart. I can't remember we shot it later that night or the next day, but it was a really fast turnaround. And I just had to put this thing together. The model shop was sort of gone at this point. So it was you look at it and go, ooh. But again, like I was saying earlier, you can sort of get away with murder on some of these models. This was far enough from the camera. The Queen was over. You couldn't really see it, and so that's what's in the movie.